This episode is brought to you by TriStar Trust Bank.
No matter what's going on in the world, we can't let that keep us from doing what we're called to do.
Welcome to the Saginaw Art Museum podcast. The COVID-19 pandemic is altering the usual routines of people around the globe and around the block. As practices of social distancing and self-quarantine are implemented, artists are finding new ways to adapt to the changing landscape. In this series, Art at Home, we have conversation with artists and creative-minded individuals to understand the way these unusual times are impacting lives. Aaron and Tamar Chipp are the leaders of the worship band Modern Day Cure. As songwriters, we learn more about the elements of discipline and inspiration they are implementing through these challenging times. In our conversation, Aaron and Tamar emphasize how practicing creativity can itself lead to new ideas. This interview was recorded July 2nd, 2020. Today, we have Tamar and Aaron Chipp. They are musicians and living in Nashville, but from Saginaw, and really grateful that you're able to join in this conversation today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Yeah. So I want to just start by asking you a little bit about how you are working through sort of these unusual times. You know, we have a pandemic that we're dealing with, as well as some social changes in our country right now. And I'm curious how you are responding to that as artists and specifically as musicians, and what kind of perspective you bring to the conversation with the talents that you have.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. This has been unprecedented times, and it's been tough and challenging and hard times for for a lot of people. And I think that for us, we've really had to make a conscious effort to continue to create, even in the midst of all that's going on in the world, because it does affect you. And like you said, with the pandemic and with the tension and the racial tension and things that are going on in the world, and some of the social things that we're seeing, there is a burden that comes along with that when you're watching the news or you're on social media and you're experiencing these things, the conversations that you're having with people. And I think for us, we've had to really make a decision, like I said, not to allow ourselves to be burdened and to still do the work of creating. And I think about there's a book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And essentially the book is about winning your inner creative battles. And he talks about this thing called resistance, this invisible force that wants to distract us and prevent us from doing our work. And in the book, he goes on to explain how resistance is fueled by fear. And again, just with all that's going on in the world, it's so easy to be consumed by fear. Yet when that happens, we're adding to the resistance that keeps us from doing the work that we were created to do. And so the irony is that a lot of times it's the creative process is creating that helps us to get out of that funk, that cycle of being burdened and with all that's going on in the world. So I think for us during this time, we've had to be intentional about the things that we're watching, the things that we're listening to, how much social media we're taking in. We have to be intentional about making time in our day to create, to sit down, to write. And we're actually recording
in the
middle of all of this. And so we've had to really to say, hey, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna create, and we're not going to allow resistance or outside forces to keep us from doing what we know God ultimately has put in our heart to do. And it hasn't been perfect. I mean, there's certainly been days where we're like, man, we don't feel like doing anything. This is tough. This is hard to see just to see people hurting all over the world. But to know that we were designed to create. I think as Christians, certainly our faith shapes our worldview, and so we believe that we were created in God's image, and that He's a creator, and so that we're creators. All of us creators, all of mankind are called to create. That doesn't necessarily mean music or art, but we've all been given something to do to bring beauty to this world and to others. And so to understand that no matter what's going on in the world, we can't let that keep us from doing what we're called to do.
Yeah, and I totally agree, especially with us as musicians. The entertainment industry has completely been silenced at this point, especially here in Nashville, Music City. A lot of people's lifeline and lifeblood is in the music industry. And so we've seen that many people have had to be creative, in the music industry to continue to be creative and to share what's on the inside of them, because it can be really difficult as creative people to not be able to have that creative output, to not be able to be on the road or to record music. And so what I've seen is, a lot of the writers in town, they're doing these Zoom meetings and they're connecting and they're co-writing virtually. And that's something that we'd love to be in person to be able to do that. But we've, had to overcome some of these barriers and still make that effort and be intentional to connect with other writers. I've seen a lot of people doing shows online and such, just to be able to continue to serve people, because there is such a need, and music is so inspirational. It crosses so many barriers, and it's still needed even in this space. And so just continue intentional and just doing what you can do, even if it's 10 minutes a day, just doing what you need to do to continue to create and to put that out there. It just does so much internally. It does so much mentally, just stress and such. It helps you manage stress just to be able to continue to be creative. It really is a blessing. And it's something that we're all wired to do, is to be creative, just as Aaron had mentioned.
Yeah. And I feel like even, or even specifically to like the pandemic and the things that are going on and quarantine and all that stuff, I feel like the irony of it has caused us to be even more creative.
More creative, yeah.
How we connect with people, or how we get our message out, or how we get our music out. And I think that's the beauty of, art and music and creativity, is that oftentimes you get your best work when things are tough.
Yeah.
When things are hard, and you listen to song stories, and the artist will say, man, I wrote this song when I was really going through, I was in a dark place, or I had a hard time, or there was uncertainty, and then the song or whatever, their art resonates with so many people. And I think a lot of times it's because that art is birthed out of those seasons of those tough times, and the artist really putting a stake in the ground and saying, hey, I'm not going to give in to fear. I'm not going to give in to resistance, and whatever pain I'm feeling, whatever angst I'm feeling, whatever situation I'm facing, I'm going to turn it around and use it for good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you both had mentioned, the intentionality of being creative in your craft. Can you give some examples of where you're becoming more intentional and sort of practicing that as you're moving through these times?
Yeah. Well, we have a 2-year-old just turned a couple of weeks ago, and so just with the whole schedule with him, and especially being in because of the coronavirus, we really had to tighten up our schedule and divide up our time and really block off our time. And so, we have certain things scheduled in. There's a certain time during the day that I'm responsible for. For Brave, and there's a certain time period where Tamar's responsible, and there's times where we kind of, help each other, and we have time blocked off for practice. And our son Brave is his name. He loves drums. He's a fun drummer, even at age 2. He's already got his own kit and room, and he's amazing. But like if he hears me play, he wants to come in and play with me. So I already know, like, I cannot practice drums when Brave is up or when he's not preoccupied with something else. So we've just had to kind of structure our day to say, hey, okay, this is when I can get away and practice, or this is when we can get away and write, or this is when we can get away and record a podcast, because we know that he's asleep. We schedule writes at a certain time of the day just because we know that that's when he'll be asleep, or that's when he won't be demanding our attention. So it's just been intentional about our schedule. I think it's been
and I think the rights even too, just reaching out to our friends and those that we want to get to know and inviting them. Songwriting is huge here in Nashville, and so we've just been really intentional about reaching out and scheduling sometimes 3 to 4 hour blocks where we can kind of share what's on our hearts and what's going on in each other's lives, and we get these songs out of that. And so just being more intentional and not letting the tradition of just kind of meeting in person, not letting us from being able to connect and still write and still be creative and to share what's going on. So that's been something that I think that's been really good. And again, just blocking off time to not only just write and record, but also to be fed on things that inspire us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so important, movies or speeches and talks and things like that, reading books, all that stuff fuels inspiration. So it's so important to focus on the right things. I think it's easy to get so bogged down just kind of reading about the news all day and staying on Twitter and reading about everybody, else's response to what's going on. But then making that transition where you just make a decision that, hey, I need to step away from that. And I need to really focus on what's going to inspire me to be able to create well. It's so easy to be distracted and so easy to be overwhelmed. And so taking that time, that personal time, even some self-care to help, take a shower, go walk outside, get some sun, all those things, reading things that inspire you, watching other people that are inspiring. Those are all things that kind of help feed the creative side of creative people. And we definitely don't create in a vacuum. We just need those things to help fill us up. It's so easy to just feel empty nowadays. And so we just have to be intentional on filling ourselves up with the right things.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting to hear a little more about that cycle of inspiration. Aaron, you had mentioned earlier about sort of how the challenging times can lead to more inspiration, and then that inspiration can lead on to other things. And that's really a neat concept to consider. Where do you find that you're drawing the most inspiration from during these times? Do you find that sort of the news cycle drives you to a place of recognizing that you need to get away, and then that retreat creates the inspiration? Tell me a little bit more about that inspiration that you're experiencing.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, there are definitely times where I feel inspired, you feel divinely inspired. There's sometimes, like recently I just wrote a song, and it came to me when I was getting ready to go to bed for the night, and I really didn't even want to get up and start writing, but I did, and I'm glad I did, because I'm excited about the song. So these moments of inspiration can just kind of hit throughout the day. Again, as people of faith, the scriptures are a big point of inspiration for us, and I love reading through the Psalms and just the wide range of emotions of the writers, and how the writer can say, like, I'm so overwhelmed, my eyes are blurry from crying, my pillow is soaked with tears, just in such anguish, and then just to see how things progress throughout. And by the end of the psalm, he's saying, but yet, even in the midst of these things, God, I'll trust you. And so, those type of things that touch on kind of just the human experience and such a wide range of emotions, resonate, in these times. And so truly, like, the scriptures are a point of inspiration for us. Just family life, I think, just being parents and our son, and kind of understanding the dynamics of being a parent, and kind of getting revelation of how God must feel about us. So, as his children, that brings inspiration. And so just conversations with people, conversations with friends, whether it's through text or Zoom or a phone call, listening to what other people are saying. But sometimes there's a key word or a key phrase that will just jump out and say, oh man, there's something to that. There's a concept there. I really like the way you said that. And you can draw inspiration from that. And so it's so many things. And even like, the news or social media, like, you see things and you hear things and you say, man, that's, there's something there. And so you have to kind of withdraw, and then just get into a place where you can create. But one of the things, again, that we've been trying to be intentional about is realizing that we have to show up and do the work whether we feel inspired or not.
Right.
That book, The War of Art, again by Stephen Pressfield, he talks about the difference between a professional and an amateur. And most of the time we hear that, we think of money, we think of fame or whatever, those things that we would say, or they're a pro and somebody's an amateur. But it really says, it boils down to, professionals show up every single day and do the work, and amateurs only show up when they feel inspired. Mm. So professionals show up and they work until they're inspired.
Right.
And amateurs only show up to work when they feel inspired. And so I think that's been the thing that we're learning, is to obviously, like, when you have those moments of divine inspiration, to run with it. Because oftentimes they're like times where it's inconvenient. Like you said, you're about to go to sleep, or, you got to get the kid down to bed or whatever. But you have those moments and you have to take advantage of them. But then also to be disciplined and structured and say, hey, I'm going to give myself some time here to read, to write, to create, even if I don't necessarily feel anything. And I'm just going to do the work and believe that the inspiration will follow.
And then you just have this breakthrough. It's like, man, I'm so glad that I spent that time, because I have new ideas and I feel inspired. Yeah. And there's so much meaning and just purpose in creation as it is. And so I just feel like it just brings so much self-awareness. It brings so much clarity and so much peace and connection that we're all looking for. So, man, it's just such a vital thing to have in life is, to be able to be creative. And then we just feel so honored that we can just do this together as a family. And our son, eventually he'll be coming on the road with us. So it's just been fun. It's really neat to be able to step out and just do what you love.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that combination of inspiration and discipline, I think that is a good takeaway. That it takes both parts, so that you're prepared, and when that moment comes, to know what to do with it, and so that's really a wonderful lesson there.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me share. Yeah, it really is something that we're learning every day. And as new parents, I mean, it's a lot of times we're just really tired and don't feel like doing it, but we just got to, we have to push ourselves to just show up. So yeah, it's been a cool journey.
Well, parenting is the ultimate act of creativity, right?
Yeah. Amen.
Well, Erin, Tamar, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you have a single that's coming out relatively soon. I'll include some links in the show description here, and so people can hear your music and follow along with your story.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We love that.
Appreciate that.
All right. You take care. Thank you for listening to the Saginaw Art Museum podcast. You can stay connected with the museum through our website and social media channels. We invite you to become a subscriber of this podcast or become a monthly contributor to the show to help us carry out our mission of providing art for all.